A 52-year-old software engineer who enjoys gunsmithing in his free time is now facing 18 years in prison for the American tradition of building his own firearms. Because he lives in New York. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. A 52-year-old man from Brooklyn has been in the legal fight of his life for the past 2 years. He's a father and software engineer that likes building things in his free time, discovered the world of firearms, and took up the hobby of building guns from parts. This has been perfectly legal in America until about the last 5 minutes, when suddenly it went from an American tradition to something that can get you a SWAT raid, a 37-count indictment, and 18 years in prison. The state claims that this hefty penalty is because he bought $10,000 worth of parts in order to build himself a bunch of scary ghost guns. Meanwhile, Dexter Taylor thought he was just having good old legal fun. He also dares to be a conservative black man in Brooklyn, which has gotten him approximately 0 points with the leftist activist politicians. Because he's playing for the wrong side. Taylor had been building his own guns from frames and receivers for years until one day a joint task force of the ATF and NYPD raided his apartment and broke the door down. He had been asleep at the time and actually thought they were at the wrong home because as far as he knew, he had done nothing wrong. Instead, they arrested him and dragged him off to Rikers Island for a week. The Brooklyn District Attorney, Eric Gonzalez, indicted Taylor for purchasing $10,000 worth of gun parts online to build illegal, untraceable firearms known as ghost guns. According to the April 2022 press release, the district attorney identified the defendant as Dexter Taylor of Bushwick. He was arraigned today before Brooklyn Supreme Court Justice Phyllis Chu on a 37-count indictment in which he is charged with multiple counts of second, third, and fourth degree criminal possession of a weapon, criminal possession of a firearm, prohibition on unfinished frames or receivers, and 1 count of unlawful possession of pistol ammo. He is not suspected of or charged with any violent offenses. He also has no previous criminal record, and yet he's now facing 18 years in prison for a hobby. Now, before we get into the rest of the details, I think that this is a great opportunity to tell you all about the attorneys on retainer. While this video is not about a self-defense case, it definitely highlights how important it is to have a lawyer on your side when it comes to anything related to firearms. We also know from the Alan Coley case that even with self-defense insurance, a lawyer is not always guaranteed in those situations. The Attorneys for Freedom law firm has stepped up with their Attorneys on Retainer program to try and fill that void of making sure you're covered for legal defense if a self-defense incident happens. It's literally a program to retain legal counsel rather than an insurance program that has all kinds of exclusions in the fine print. Attorneys on Retainer has you covered for misdemeanors, felonies, appeals, and even bail bonds. It doesn't even matter if you were in a gun-free zone. Unlike insurance companies, their only requirements are that the incident happened after purchasing coverage and that you reasonably acted in good faith. So switch over from your existing self-defense coverage, head on over to my link down in the description, and get yourself $50 off your sign-up with code LibertyDoll today. This alleged $10,000 worth of parts was used to construct what the media and prosecutors are breathlessly calling an arsenal, which consisted of 4 rifles, 5 pistols, and 4 so-called assault weapons that are, quote, as real and dangerous as traditional firearms. Because they are traditional firearms made in a traditional way. They also found mags and reloading supplies, which apparently is extra scary. The press releases by the media tried to connect him to a surge in gun crimes in Brooklyn simply by existing in the same borough. Even though, again, he is not suspected of any violent crimes, nor has he been charged with any. They have titles like Accused Ghost Gun Hoarder Insists NYC has a lot of problems with firearms, calling him a hoarder for having 13 guns, and according to the New York Daily News, a whopping 52 rounds of .22 and a couple hundred 9mm casings and powder, which you and I know are nothing. That's like 1 day at the range. And at the time of the arrest, he was a member of good standing in Manhattan's West Side Rifle and Pistol Association and said that he had passed criminal background checks. So you might be asking, well, then what's the problem except for New York being New York and F around and find out, says the state. Well, it looks like the major problem here is that Taylor did not apply for a New York carry license before beginning his hobby. But if you've been following along with any of the things happening in New York, there's a good reason for that. Taylor's lawyer notes that judges in similar cases have said that someone doesn't have Second Amendment rights without a license, which is insane and not how the Constitution works. But anyways, those judges have said that defendants don't have a standing without a license application in hand. But his lawyer believes that New York is a special case and is also using this case to challenge the constitutionality of New York's gun control laws by trying to point out the fact that New York issues so few gun permits that applying for one would have been completely futile. In fact, through a Freedom of Information request, his lawyer got the numbers from the NYPD, which took months, by the way, and calculated that even with a clean record, which he has, Taylor would have only had a 4% chance of being issued a license. 4%. This completely flies in the face of Bruen. This is in direct response and rebellion to Bruen. In fact, the number of permits being granted by the NYPD has actually gone down since Bruen. Here are the hard numbers. In 2021, the NYPD received 4,663 applications and approved 56% of them, all under the stricter proper cause standard that the Supreme Court struck down in Bruen. In 2022, the NYPD saw an increased number of new applications, 7,260 to be exact, but approved just 1,550 or 21%, even though applications filed in the second half of that year no longer had to meet the proper cause standard, where applicants had to make an affirmative case for why they needed a license. And in the 6 months after Bruen, the NYPD only approved 10%. 10%. And for permits just to keep guns in the home, the approval rate went from 19% down to 4%, approving only 86 applications in all of 2022. Let that just sink in and percolate for a minute. And they're not just outright denying most applications, they're just leaving them pending forever. In some areas of New York, and I have done videos on this, in some areas, the estimated wait time is approximately 3 years. 3 years. 3 years, start to finish, for your license to exercise your rights in New York. And a right delayed is a right denied. Not having a permit definitely does not help him in this situation at all. But Biden's frames and receivers rule is still in court. Bruen says it's all illegal anyways, and Taylor said that that's what he based his actions on. New York does regulate ghost guns and has been cracking down on them, but again, Bruen. And there's already other lawsuits out there attacking New York's licensing schemes, and the fact that police departments are just not giving them. So we'll have to see how it all plays out, but I am afraid that New York will be using him as an example. Taylor has a Give Send Go to try and help him with legal fees that I will link down in the description. There's always folks in the comments talking about how we don't have to abide by unconstitutional laws, and that's pretty much what this guy did. So I know that the economy is bad, terrible actually, but if you've got an extra couple bucks, it sounds like it would be going to a good cause. So that's it for this video, guys. I will be watching this case, and shout out to, I forget who it was, I'm sorry, but someone on Twitter actually tagged me in, I believe, Spike Cohen's post about this. So thank you for tagging me on that and bringing this story to my attention. As always, you guys know the stuff for the algorithm. Like, share, and subscribe if you're new here. Ring that notification bell. And as always, thanks for tuning in and happy shooting.